thank y'all for sharing that. On a day when we celebrate the sort of breadth and depth of our community, I think it is important for us to think back on the generations that have come before and all the people who have contributed in their thoughts, their prayers, their hard work, and gifts to creating what we appreciate. And one of my teachers talks about the caravan of creation and how the past is laid before us, and that we step in the footprints of those who have gone before. And our future is behind us, and as much as we want to see it, we can't. All we can do is trust that we are putting our feet in the place that can bring the greatest good and the greatest transformation for our world. So, I love it when serendipity happens and it works the way it's supposed to. Yeah. And particularly in sharing a wedding, which really is about the bride and the groom, but it's also about all the generations that went before and those that will come after. So what a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Today, I thought it would be important for us just to take some time to say thank you to each other and to celebrate, to come together with gratitude for all the gifts of time and service and resources that each of us gives to the continued health of the fellowship. As we consider what has been meaningful, perhaps even transformational for us during this year, I ask that we also reflect on our heritage as Unitarian Universalists and what we affirm, because it is the foundation for what we create together. Hence the apples in our trail mix, hence the song that you just shared with us. As we think about what kind of foundation we're laying and what we want to create together, I draw our attention to a quote by the Reverend Rosemary Bray McNatt in the book A Chosen Faith. She's the senior minister at the Fourth Universalist Society in New York City. In South Carolina, imagine a fourth Unitarian society, but anyway, we could get carried away about that. That's far down in the future. So she writes, whether you revere God, goddess, nature, the human spirit, or something holy that you have no name for, you are welcome in any Unitarian Universalist community to worship, study, work, and be in relationship with people who are all on their own spiritual paths. Your doubts and questions will never jeopardize your belonging. In this faith, we welcome your doubts and questions, and we uphold one another amid all the storms of life. We are the people who sought a religion marked by freedom and reason and acceptance, in addition to faith and hope and love. Our forebears were martyrs who died for religious freedom, ministers who preached that no one is damned or outside the reach of divine love, thinkers who taught us that no spiritual tradition has a monopoly on wisdom, activists who focused our attention on bettering this world rather than placing our hope in the afterlife. We stand in a grand and glorious stream of faith, always flowing toward freedom, justice, and love of the world. These are treasures. They enrich each one of us as we know them deeply within our being. And then only as we give them away to others, again and again. In this time and place, with our own history and potential, we are treasures to each other. We come together again and again and again because something in these people and in this community reminds us of who we can become and affirms where we are right now on our journey. We acknowledge the precious nature of this fellowship, and so we give generously to one another. When we gather, we acknowledge that it's very difficult to live and survive in a healthy way in our society without a community. When we come here and see the precious faces of those who have grown dear to us, we know there is something sacred, something holy about this place. And I'm reminded again of Nancy Schaefer's words that Will read a few minutes ago. The work of our faith is naming the holy by its many names. Life that cares, life that enlarges life, life that holds us even when we cannot see it, even when we do not yet perceive it. Yes, we sometimes need each other in ways that we don't fully understand. We receive and we give. Often, our experience of the sacred is as simple as the act of giving and receiving. It's so much a part of this community that we don't often think of the multitude of ways we engage that rhythm of giving and receiving within this fellowship. Each of us contributes to the spirit of this congregation and to the creation of a space where we can learn and grow and play together. The work of the church is both profound and very humble. There are events that we share that touch us to the core. Dedicating a baby, remembering one who has died, celebrating a wedding. These are profound experiences. Our congregation is also as simple as the often unnoticed acts that make it possible for each of us to enjoy this community and to create sacred space. So it's good for us to stop for just a moment to express our gratitude to each other for the wonderful year we have shared. As we consider what we're thankful for this year, I invite us to imagine all the small things that are done for us each week that go unnoticed. The programs that were planned, services organized, music practice, doors unlocked, tables set up, coffee made, sound system turned on, money counted, flower beds weeded, committee meetings shared, food gathered, hikes planned, garbage recycled, children taught, accounts balanced, visitors welcomed, building maintained, meals prepared. We could go on and on and on. Each of us is the recipient of the many little tasks that are taken on every week by our members. When they're accomplished, we don't even think about them. When they don't get done, sometimes we panic. We depend on one another and we support each other in so many ways. All these tasks highlight the rich paradox of being in community. One side of the paradox is that we come trusting that this will be a place where we will be accepted and our continuing search for meaning affirmed. We trust in part of this paradox that we will need each other. The other side of the paradox is that we give of ourselves to others without thinking about what we need. We step aside from our own needs to support others in their joy and pain, laughter and exploration. We balance both aspects of this paradox of human existence. Living within this paradox helps us focus on where we are now in our lives as we consider the question, do I have the capacity to be of service to others, to put my ego needs aside while at the same time seeking the support and nurture that's present here? My experience of this community is that we do find a balance within that paradox. I've been deeply moved by the capacity within this community for both self-reflection and offering caring support for one another. Having been here as your minister for almost a year, can we believe that? I can say even more strongly than when I first arrived, I am very grateful to be here, to share the challenge and wonder of deepening our relationships within this fellowship and the larger community. Absolutely, I'm glad I'm here. I'm glad to be one of the recipients of the hard work and deep commitment of so many members and friends. Y'all did amazing work, as I've said before, during your interim years, and that hard work in examining what needed to be addressed within the congregational dynamics made it much easier for me to just come in and hit the ground running. It was a great gift to me. So in the last few weeks, as I realized I'm getting closer to this 1 year anniversary, I've reflected some on my checklist for the congregation I was looking for. What I sought was a congregation that was willing to build a strong community and also to look honestly at what was working and what wasn't working. I wasn't looking for a perfect congregation, but one that was willing to grow inwardly and outwardly. I wanted to be with a group of people who enjoyed, had fun being together, who laughed a lot and shared deeply. I wanted to be with a community that took care of each other, but who looked beyond its walls to care for the local community and the world. I wanted to be with a group of people who nurtured the multiple generations that are growing within this community. And what was especially important to me was a congregation that was committed to students. I wanted to be with a community that understood that as a leader, I might have both insight and definitely have some rough edges, and that the congregation members were willing to grow with me. I wanted to be with people who understood that we are privileged to be with each other in the most vulnerable aspects of our lives, as we come into the world and as we go out of the world and everything in between. I wanted to be in ministry with a congregation that continued to work on how to embody the reality that love is the spirit of this congregation. And here I am, deeply grateful that I've found a community that embraces all of those aspects of ministry on my checklist that are important to me and are part of my growing understanding of the sacredness of life. Thank you for a wonderful, productive, fun year, and for allowing me to be part of this community. I can't imagine a congregation where I would feel as happy with the way in which we share the ministry of this community. There's so many things that I love and appreciate about sharing the ministry of this fellowship with each one of you. And we are definitely on an exciting journey together. I've been thinking about journeys a good bit the last 2 or 3 weeks as I've been reading a book called Walking the Amazon, and it's about a 2.5-year journey by a British man and an indigenous man who was his guide for much of the trip. And they walked from the Pacific Ocean to the Atlantic Ocean. It was probably one of the most grueling journeys a human can imagine. At least at the polar caps, you don't have to worry about things boring under your skin that want to grow there. As I read, I realized what an incredible goal he envisioned. I mean, nobody has ever done this. And now he's in the Guinness Book of World Records. But, you know, he wanted to challenge himself. But as I read along, I realized that it wasn't the vision alone that made it possible. It was the people he met along the way who offered hospitality, food, a place to sleep, an ear, and helpful hints that gave him the ability to maintain his stamina at points when he thought he couldn't make it physically or emotionally. And while I certainly hope that our individual journeys through life are nowhere near as intense as Ed Stafford's, I'm also aware that it is the people we gather around us who help us sustain the journey and who make life worth living. So I'd like for us to celebrate our achievements this past year, large and small. Let's think about what some of them are. This year we hired our amazing Director of Religious Education, Teresa Pizzuto, and our wonderful Office Secretary, Susan Watson, who support the congregation in many ways. We reorganized the religious education program and recruited a great team of teachers. The board worked on policies and bylaws. We've been active in Clemson area congregations in touch, Clemson Community Care, the campus ministry, our daily rest, and a lot of other groups. I've heard it said, you know, if there's something happening, there are going to be Unitarians there. We won honorable mention on our display for the minister's cook-off. And we have to give Garrett Thompson's winning smile credit for most of that. The incredible hospitality, the Holidays and Hospitality Committee got reorganized, and many of you are helping feed all the rest of us. Our wonderful membership team helped welcome in a number of new members and weekly greet visitors. Our Worship Services Committee is now rejuvenated, and we have, thanks to y'all's input, scheduled topics for every Sunday until the end of June 2014. We have an adult faith development task force that's already planning classes through next year. I'm serious when I say that we have the strongest and best covenant group program of any congregation that I've ever seen, and it's been a wonderful addition to have the spiritual parenting group to be part of our groups. So keep on going, Carol, and the facilitators and the members. Our Green Sanctuary program offered a wonderful class and is doing a lot of things cooperatively with other congregations. We're fiscally sound and beginning to repay monies that we borrowed from our endowment. And I appreciate so much hard work from lots of people, including Bob Snellsire, who's retiring from being treasurer. She sings gosh, that winter solstice singing ritual was amazing. And they and Monica and Paula and Jorge enrich our lives by singing and beautiful music. Our grounds are beautiful, and this year we've been able to finish the memorial garden. 2 meditation groups met weekly the whole year and inspire so many people. We are a reading group, so we have several book groups. Many thanks to Pat Zingoli and all the members of the campus group who offer us presence on the Clemson campus, and many of the members of that group, some of whom are here, are key leaders in the environmental groups on Clemson campus. Our children, as we saw this morning, help us gather food for Clemson Community Care. And, you know, it's a little wild and crazy every week, but they're learning what it means to give to others. Living our values, we're known as a community for our social action commitment. Wow, what a year. There's so many other things, and I know I left a lot out, but I think we just need to look at all the things that we've accomplished this year and to be happy about that, and also begin to prepare, and I know people are tired of hearing me say that, prepare for our 60th year in 2014. So to acknowledge how many of us are involved in what we do and share, I'd like to ask us, if you're able, if you served on the board or a committee this year, would you please rise? Stay standing. If you helped with regular tasks such as hospitality or ushering or grounds work days or the Balof certificates, would you please rise? If you were involved in some social justice activity outside the congregation or a group like the campus ministry group, would you please stand? If you're willing and able. If you're a new member and are trying to figure out how you want to get involved in the future, would you please stand? If you've participated in services this year, like one like this, would you please rise? If you are a visitor who's giving us the opportunity to share our community, will you stand? It takes us all, and we have been very generous with one another. So look around at all these wonderful, generous folks standing here. If you're standing or remaining seated, if you're participating, I'd like for you to participate in a short litany. As we share this, I want you to look around. Don't look at me. Look at each other. Because y'all are the ones to whom you are offering the response in this litany. And I'll offer a statement, and then we'll all say, we thank you for sharing yourself. When there was a need, you came forward. We thank you for sharing yourself. In the night or daytime, on weekends, and even in the coldest, darkest part of the year, you helped. Thank you for sharing yourself. Elected and duly appointed, or quietly, anonymously, and unbidden, you did what needed doing. We thank you for sharing yourself. With good humor and new ideas, you gave generously to us all. We thank you for sharing yourself, for patience and forbearance, and a willingness to compromise when disagreements arose. We thank you for sharing yourself. Sometimes with the help of many hands, other times alone, you worked. We thank you for sharing yourself. You gave your time, talent, and even your treasure for the life of the congregation. We thank you for sharing yourself. With gratitude for families and loved ones who supported you in your efforts, worried for you when things piled up, and perhaps grumbled at you for the extent of your commitment. And so we say to our family members and loved ones, we thank you for sharing yourself. For all things great and small you have given this congregation, we take time today to honor and say, we thank you for sharing yourselves. Thank you, and be seated. And in our sharing, it's really the spirit of this community that enlivens us and excites us. So since we've been standing for a while, I'll let us remain seated as we share our closing